And I think the work you enjoy doing will end up being the most appealing simply because you enjoy doing it and you're making a lot of it and you can see the passion in it as well.
What happened? What changed him like that? I don't know. Something he saw, I guess.
Welcome back to the Pencil Kings podcast. Mitch here on the line. Mechanical Apple. There's something special about this animation, a way that most people don't do their animation. Another inspiring artist interview on the Pencil Kings podcast.
What is it? I'm sorry to bother you. Just a few questions.
Welcome Ari and Jason to the call. How are you guys doing today?
Very good, thanks.
Good, thanks, Mitch.
Where are we calling from today? Where are you at in the world?
We're in Adelaide, Australia. Down the bottom in the middle.
In the middle.
Antarctica is south.
Yeah, Arctic.
We have a direct line to Antarctica.
Just like us in Canada, you know, we've got the North Pole covered. You guys have got the South Pole. It's all good. So tell me a little bit about what you guys do at Mechanical Apple.
We run a small, we call it a boutique animation service, I suppose. It is actually, primarily it's the two of us, and then we try and do all the work ourselves, and then occasionally we'll bring other people in, but we like to keep it small. It's primarily 2D animation, and it's done with an intent to uphold traditional values in the work. So we steer away from doing anything that's too heavily digitized. So though we work digitally, we're trying to hide that digital footprint. We've been at it for about 3 years?
3 years or so. We've done a few music videos and short films.
Well, obviously we do our client work, which can be commercials, music videos, various kind of spots, a little bit for video games, but we're also always trying to develop our own creative work, lots on the go all the time.
Tell me a little bit about this idea of trying to use or trying to emulate the traditional style using digital tools.
I guess we're both, like a lot of our work, people say reminds them of like classic animation and like picture books, and we get a lot of those compliments. We're heavily influenced by, I guess, growing up watching animation when those digital processes weren't really evident. So I guess that just appeals to us.
Yeah, there's a bit of an isolating quality, or there's a disconnecting quality perhaps in digital work. There's a disconnection between the art. There's a removal of the artist from the work, where you can kind of see the computer creating the product. Whereas in the old films, the old 2D films perhaps, and the picture books that we really like, you can still see the artist very directly in the work, and you can still see perhaps the line that they've made or the brush stroke that they've made, and the computer, working within the computer, has a habit of removing that or stripping that away just because it's a mathematical, mechanical machine. So we're constantly trying to reinstill that quality into the work.
Yeah, we should say we've both worked a lot in 3D animation as well. And so we know that so much artistic effort still goes into that, but it does have an effect of, when compared to like a brushstroke or a drawn line, it has the effect of stripping that human element away.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah.
The other very probably more basic motivation is, having both worked in 3D extensively in the past, it's very laborious. It's incredibly technical, incredibly complicated, and
probably requires more people as well.
Yeah, generally requires more people just to produce simple things. So in the 2D animation that we produce now, with two people, we can produce a finished result, and the whole process is incredibly simple comparatively. In fact, it is incredibly simple.
Maybe the labor is the same, but if because of how straightforward it is, when compared to 3D animation, it feels less labor intensive.
Yeah, you're not dealing with crashes and bugs and technical hiccups. So
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, which is just very stressful. And it basically means you're focusing on art all the time.
Yeah.
Your problems are artistic problems. They're not mathematical problems.
when I watch your animations, and if you're listening to this, if you go to mechanicalapple.com, they've got examples there, and I would say there's like a warmth and like a softness and a human element to it. But warmth, I think, is the one thing that really comes through. That's the feeling that I see, and it could be the color of the line work that you use, but it just all looks very nice and beautiful, and it flows together. So how did you decide to go in this vein? Because I would think that a lot of people would say, don't do that. That's a terrible path to take. How are you going to get any work? Like people don't need that. They need drones to work the 3D machines. So how did you get started and choose that path of going the direction that you have?
I guess it's funny because I started as a 3D artist as well. Maybe that was part of it, that I was kind of yearning to do traditional art, or it was kind of like had a repelling effect or something like that.
I was actually I was an art director at a company that primarily did 3D art, and I was there for a long time. Jason actually worked there as well, which is where we met, though we met originally at university, and internally, I was pushing to produce more 2D, and we did end up doing that. We ended up doing that to the point where we ended up creating a short film, which was called The Cat Piano, which is available online. And Jason was the art director on that, and I directed that with another guy, Eddie White, from the studio. But it was probably that project, which ended up doing fairly well, like on the festival circuit and internationally, where we refined the pipeline that we now use ourselves. So basically that film finished, and we were quite happy with the result, but then the company understandably had to continue doing the 3D work, and we really wanted to continue to pursue the 2D side of things further, given the response that we'd had from that. And that's probably where Mechanical Apple was born.
There's something simple and straightforward about 2D animation that is just relieves my headache, I think. I don't know.
You mentioned the warmth, and it's warmth definitely, but perhaps that comes partially from how light it is, that it doesn't have all that weight of creation behind it, all of the rendering computers and networks and hundreds of staff.
Yeah, there's perhaps less mystery behind how it's made as well. People watching can see that it's a painted background and there's like drawn characters over frames. When you watch 3D animation, it's a lot of people see it as this kind of technical mystery.
Yeah, in the same way, stop motion is very appealing to a lot of people, I think, because they can see. Because they can their brain can start to work out how it's made, and so it isn't so mysterious, and they suddenly have much more of a connection where they can see the fingerprints in the characters and the world and the way perhaps the sets are being built.
When you guys were starting out, you came from the 3D background and working at a studio. How did you make the leap from 3D to 2D and your skill set?
We both went to the University of South Australia and did a fine arts degree. Well, I was majoring in digital art. I guess were you in the?
I think I was as well.
Yeah, and at the time that had a big 3D component to it, and I was really keen on that in uni. And as soon as I left, I kind of had enough already. So I just started painting and trying to go towards illustration. Funnily enough, when I got a job, it was doing 3D just because I knew how to do it. And I also had an artistic background as well, so it was kind of favorable.
Yeah, and given that, even when we were working in 3D, we were still producing a lot of 2D art because we both worked as art directors at various companies. There was a lot of 2D art still required. It was probably the more enjoyable part of the process than for us, or at least the less stressful part than when we had to dive into Maya or 3D Studio Max, and
it gets
intensive. And
I remember having that same feeling where It's like you're always trying to recreate reality using this computer program, and at some point it's like, well, why don't we just shoot video? Video is as close to reality as we get. Like, why are we rendering this to the nth degree when you could take a photograph? Seems like such a scary thing to do, you know, to leave the studio to pursue something that's more fulfilling. How did you guys approach it? Did you just one day say like, hey, you know, like we've got an idea, and then started to run with it in your spare time, and then it turned into something? You know, walk me through those steps, because I know a lot of people would love to hear how you did that.
Yeah,
Ours was probably a funny one, because at the time, I was working freelance for a few studios, and Ari was art directing at the studio. We were also trying to get funding for our own projects. I don't know how long we were trying to secure funding for very short films and development. We kept losing them, and eventually we just thought it'd be easier just to actually take the time to, you know, put that effort into actually just making something. And I guess it just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, it did. The work came from the work that we then created ourselves. It was from the short films that we made and from the style that we set. We tried to always have a very high quality in everything we produced. Word got around, didn't take too long.
Yeah.
I wasn't working in a massive company. It was a mid-sized company, but there were a lot of jobs coming through, and those jobs were maybe under 80,000 Australian dollars or under, which is something that they always had to pass on because those kind of budgets won't sustain the business.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at those jobs constantly and thinking, well, hang on, that one just disappeared and that one just disappeared. And all of them, we could be doing those size jobs and actually doing quite well out of them. When you're suddenly not in a team of 20 people, you're a team of 2 people or 3 or 4, they're quite comfortable and you can turn them around quite quickly. And if you look around, there tends to be a lot of it.
And there seems to be a general rule that the less a job pays, the more like interesting creatively it is, and the more freedom you have to actually do something interesting.
Yeah, give your own input and work within a style that you enjoy. We've done a few music videos in the past, and that's always a great way in. They tend to not pay so much, but they give enough so that you can survive, and they give that creative freedom, and so they tend to be great pieces. You can show what you can do, and you can also create a really nice short film almost.
Yeah, and you're mostly working with another artist who is the musician rather than, say, a brand or something like that with advertising that actually pays very well.
Yeah, but then musicians understand much more creative intent or your creative desires, or if you want to take risks with things.
Well, I love it. I love that story about how you got started. So is there like a Mechanical Apple studio space, or there was, but not anymore?
Yeah, at the moment there's not, but we find it is necessary when we get above 2 people is when it becomes an issue, just because communication becomes difficult. Because Jason and I have worked together for so long, we're very in sync with how we work, so we probably don't require the level of communication that a larger job will. So if someone else comes into the studio, we have to verse them on our systems. Yeah. It does take some more direct communication. I should mention that we have a distinct division in our work, at least in the work on the site, which is, in the past at least, I've provided the 2D animation, so the character animation and that kind of thing, and then Jason's worked on the environments and effects and a lot of the 3D content, and then we sort of share the duties of compositing based on the project and based on the
times and what else is happening.
The work we do is within a range that we're comfortable with and we really enjoy. So we're not producing content that
is a drag.
That is a drag, or that we have to, that we have to hide away and pretend just do it for the money. It's all because we sell ourselves on the work that we love. We get the work that we love.
A lot of people aren't at that place. They're trying to please everybody. They're trying to be generalists. They're trying to be able to copy a lot of different styles. I think it's really ballsy, I guess, to go in one direction. Like it's really smart. It's so smart.
Yeah.
But how did you know that people would like it? Did you do any testing, or
we liked it. So I guess we assumed that other people would, unless we're completely off.
Yeah, we trusted that we weren't too crazy, perhaps. It's also like it's a unique time as well. When we got into it, it was at a point where people were saying very, very strongly that 2D animation was dead and that industry had died and 3D was the way forward. And there's probably a bit of a shift now where you are starting to see 2D practitioners coming back. There was a hole where no one was providing the 2D service, and all the people who were trained in 2D had disappeared or had been sucked into the 3D environment. And so even though there wasn't a world full of that kind of work, there was more than enough of that work, and there was serious need for people who could do it. In all of our experience there was enough 2D work for those who could do it, just because there wasn't anyone who could do it.
And do you think that you got kind of lucky that way, or were you doing this by design? Were you very strategic?
I guess we knew that just, I don't know, like
looking back, you could say, oh yeah, it was the smartest decision ever. 2D animation was dying. People were saying it was dead. There was this gap, like people wanted it. And then we had this cool style that we enjoyed doing, that we enjoyed. And then some other people enjoyed it. It was like, we're geniuses. But it seems like it's maybe not quite that's the way, no one wants to come out and saying, I'm a genius. But
yeah. People aren't going to stop responding to paintings like drawn imagery, and we knew that it didn't really matter so much as long as the stories we were telling were good and the places we were going were interesting. I don't know, did we think about it that much?
It's not tactical is the answer, and not strategic, just
intuitive, I guess.
Just intuitive, and our own desire and our own interest. Yeah, like Jason says, there was an appeal in that kind of content to us, and we could see that there was an appeal in that kind of content to other people. There just wasn't that much 2D content being provided at that time.
There's so many 3D animated films that have like lavish 2D openings, and whenever that happens, there's like 1,000 people going, "Oh, why don't they just make a film in that style? That would be amazing." And I guess we heard that so many times that I don't know. It's obvious to everyone that is appealing to a lot of people.
What are some of the movies that you're talking about, just for reference, that if people are curious?
Well, I guess that Kung Fu Panda opening was really.
Oh
amazing.
Yeah, that was awesome. Totally.
There's a lot.
Yeah, sometimes the Pixar films use them. I know one of them used it with the credits.
Yeah.
Very effectively. Even the Monsters Inc. film had a really nice sort of graphic intro that was all sort of shape based.
Yeah, we watch a lot of short films as well, and there's still a big animation community in the short film industry.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of artists filmmakers producing more artistic shorts in 2D, and there's also a timeless quality. It ages well, perhaps.
It's probably also like not downplaying. Like, this is on the back of, say, Spirited Away winning an Oscar, like this beautiful 2D animated film, and places like France and Japan have a long history of like audiences loving 2D animation, and there's no reason why the rest of the world doesn't.
You've gone out on a limb and you've pursued something that wasn't a sure thing, but it's worked out very successfully for you. You've transitioned from like one style of art into another style of art, and that's worked out really well. I guess did you feel any fear when you were making this leap, from going from the stable studio thing to doing your own? And any words or advice that you could give people when they want to take a chance or pursue something else?
It still can be a bit random, and there's sort of certain things that are out of your control, which is probably the difficult part, like that sometimes 2 jobs may appear and you're snowed under with work, and then the next month nothing appears, or 3 jobs appear and you have to turn down one, and then then there's 2 months where that work isn't happening. So it's a really enjoyable lifestyle, but there is a stressful element to it where you're never quite certain about what the next months are bringing. You can mitigate that by getting out there and talking to people and marketing. The best thing that we do is that the work is sustaining enough to be comfortable. And what it means is, or at least what we do in our practice, and I think anyone really should be doing this, is if you do have a moment where you're not working, you're still working on developing your own content. If we're not working on a service job, we'll be working on a new short film or developing some sort of idea, creative outcome that will then end up selling the business more. You do the work, you promote yourself with the work you want to be doing. And that's what we did. And then, like I think we were saying previously, we were discussing that it probably wasn't like we did recognize that there was a need for that kind of content or like an appeal to that kind of content. So all the success that we've had as a result sort of proves that was the right path to go down.
And I think the work you enjoy doing will end up being the most appealing simply because you enjoy doing it and you're making a lot of it and you can see the passion in it as well. It should probably also say it depends on individual's situation. I think it's important to develop a situation where you don't have to, and that's even financial, where you don't always have to take on every job that comes in, and it's important to be able to actually take on work that you want most of the time.
Yeah, that might be a long-term goal. You can get bogged down within certain services that perhaps can lead you astray from where you want to be.
You do have to kind of make steps towards it, whether that's doing your own work out of hours or very carefully kind of maneuvering towards that work. You just, I guess, I don't know, are we looking for life lessons? Save well, live at home for as long as you can.
No, I think it's great because I see a lot of people falling into that trap of, undercharging and then taking whatever job that comes by, so that when something good actually does come across your desk, you don't have time or you're too tired or you're burnt out. And so, I think taking those steps, whatever it is, blocking out, 1 week every 2 months or something where you're going to just hunker down on your passion project or something that pushes you towards more of doing the work that you actually want to do. It's really powerful advice, and I think more people could and should heed that, and you'd find a lot more enjoyment from the work that you do instead of being, like you were saying, kind of just this services company that doesn't really have an identity.
There's a thing about artists, they always want to produce the best quality of work, and artists just have a natural pride in their work, and what it means is that you're just always putting all of yourself into everything. It's very difficult for an artist to switch off and just get something out the door, and that's great. I think this is a great thing, but it does mean you have to recognize that you will tire yourself. Your world will become filled by that work. You will end up sort of flat at the end, even if you're doing a job that you're not that passionate about.
You thought it was a fair gamble. Either I'd find myself or get it out of my system.
All right, guys, let's wrap this one up. Can you guys just tell us where we can find you online, where we can see some of your video work, and how we can get in touch with you if you want to reach out, maybe hire you guys to do some animation for our music videos or anything else that we have going on?
So you can find some of our work at mechanicalapple.com. We're actually just finishing up on some small tutorial videos showing the process that we use.
Follow us on Twitter.
At MECApple, MEC Apple. We also have, we have Vimeo. Yeah, and you can always email us at contact@mechanicalapple.com. If you want to ask questions about our processes, we can chat to you about it. Always keen to hear from other artists, especially 2D animators as well, because it's sort of really nice to realize that there are more of them out there, and they are starting to appear, and we are recognizing that there's a real community building behind it now.
Nice. All right, well, you heard it here. There's lots of ways that you can get in touch, but if you're listening, definitely go and at least check out one video. I think it'll put a smile on your face, and it might just make your day. So thank you very much for being on the call, guys, and best of luck with the business.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mitch.
You don't understand. We saw something that changed things. That's what happens to all of us. Doesn't matter if we really see it or only imagine we do. We see something that changes us.
If you'd like to know more about what we do, head on over to pencilkings.com, where we're offering professional training for artists all over the world at a price that anyone can afford. See you there.